In this video, we're going to be covering everything to do with our tool belt. Our tool belt is very important in the gutter truck and in the maintenance truck. More so the gutter truck than the maintenance truck, because a lot of times you won't be using this in the maintenance truck, but when you are on the install truck, this is probably the most important tool you will have on site. And I know that seems like, wow, that doesn't seem like that's that important, just a belt with some bags on it, but this saves you more time than any other tool you will ever use. Having all of your tools in one place where you can just grab them and use them, rather than having to climb all the way down the 20-30 foot extension ladder, go to the truck, grab the tool, head back up, and then you realize, oh shoot, I forgot something else, I need to go back down. So this is very important to use. Also, another reason why it's important to use is because we've had some incidents where some guys have put things in their mouths and they either cut their mouse or they swallowed a screw or they swallowed something, and the reason for that is because they don't have any pockets to put their screws in, and they think, oh, I'm just going to put them in my sweatshirt hoodie and I can put a couple in my mouth and then I'll just grab them out and put them in, when that's not the safest idea. You can cut your finger doing that. You can there's a lot of things that aren't safe about not using a tool belt, and it just saves a lot of time and it looks a lot more professional than walking around with tools in your pockets and things like that. So now that we got that covered, let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and show you what's inside of this tool belt. So our first thing here is our impact drill. Now this is not a regular drill, this is our impact. This is what we will use for mainly all gutter purposes, hanging the gutter, inserting zip screws, everything like that. You will use this drill for. This is to be kept on your belt at all times, and the reason for this is because it makes it a lot easier than having to go, oh, where'd my drill go? He took my drill. Or, guys don't know exactly which one's theirs. They leave it in the truck, they leave it in the grass, and then we have to buy a new one. So make sure that you keep one of these on your belt at all times. They have these little hooks here that you can add on and go ahead and hook it on your tool belt. Most tool belts will have a feature that allows you to hook this on there, and it just slides in just like that. And when you hang it up like this, it doesn't fall off. So it's not the best hook, but it's better than nothing, and it holds your drill on there pretty well. So go ahead and set this to our side. Next, we have our pencils here, our carpenter pencils. These will stay. You can set this belt up however you would like. This is just how I prefer mine set up. I like to leave one bag open, and that's just for other tools I'm going to need, like hammers, nail pullers, end cap crimps, things like that you don't use so much. I like to leave the spot open so I can throw those in there when I need them. So we have our pencils here. I like to keep these somewhere where they're easy to grab, they're noticeable. I can just stick them right here, grab them out. All right. We have our utility knife here. This has a little hook on it, so you can kind of hook this to anywhere you want. If you want it there, if you want it here, hook it on. You can really put this thing wherever you want. If you want to put it in one of your pockets, that's fine too. All right. Next, we have our torpedo level. This is used for leveling out the gutter. It's a lot smaller than our big 3 and 4 footers. That way you can just easily see, okay, looks pretty level there. Let me just go ahead and tack it, and we can make our adjustments as we move. All right. So our torpedo level, and again, everything that I'm naming here is a necessity to have in your tool belt. These are not things that I suggest. These are things that you have to have in your tool belt. You can leave space open for other tools, and we'll go over those after, but these are things that you have to have in your tool belt. All right. So next we have our tape measure here. You can run a 25 foot or a 35 foot. I prefer the 25 foot if you're hanging the gutter or doing smaller measurements. If you're doing the long measurements for the long runs, obviously the longer tape measure is better. Also, if you're running out the machine, I like to have a bigger tape measure as well. So again, your tape measure, you can hook this on. It has a little hook here, so if you want, you can hook this on here. Or you can just go ahead and set it inside of here. I like to just put it in there. It makes it a little easier to grab. All right. Next, we have our small snips. So these are used if you ever need to cut off a little piece of metal, a drip edge, anything that's hanging over. It just makes it easier than having to use the big snips, because a lot of times they can't get in there. So these are going to be on your belt at all times. Also, the operator of the machine, if they need to hook their tape measure onto the gutter to run extra length, these are very helpful to just make a little snip and hook it on there. All right. Next, we have our basic snips, our straight cut snips here. These are used for, cutting aluminum, anything with the gutter that you need to cut. These are the best tool to use. These are going to stay on your belt at all times. For that reason, you're going to use them all the time. All right. Again, these are straight cut, not left, not right. If you prefer to use the left or right, you can go ahead and throw one of those in here instead. But you want to have a longer, medium-sized pair of snips in your bag at all times. All right. Next, we have our utility pliers. These are just basic pliers that you can use for anything. If you need to pull out a nail, if you need to tighten something down, whatever the case is, these will stay in your bag. And then we have our needle nose pliers. Same thing, if you ever need to get into a tight space or grab something out, these pliers work well. Tighten something, things like that. Both of these pliers will always stay in your bag at all times because you never know when you're gonna need them, all right? Next, we have our pouches here. So again, these pouches can vary, whatever brand tool belt you have, it's gonna change. So in one of my pouches, I like to keep my zip screws. So whatever color we're working with today, let's say we're doing black gutters, I would keep my black gutter zip screws inside of here, inside of one of my pouches. And then, I would take maybe my gutter screws for the miters, for the walls, and I put them in here. These change. So like I said, every day you want to make sure you empty these out. So if you have a bunch of screws in here, I don't want them flying all over the truck, especially if your tool belt is hanging on one of the racks. They don't sit perfectly and the screws are going to fall out. So make sure when you're done, take out all your screws, put them back where they're supposed to go, back in the screw drawer, and then whenever we get to a new job the next day, fill up your bag with some screws. That way you don't have to keep going back and forth, and you're ready to go. Next we have here is our notepad. This is very important. This is what we use to take our measurements. So if you're measuring solo or if you're doing multiple measurements, it's important that you just write things down because it makes it a lot easier than trying to remember, 138 feet and 3/4, and then I got a 6.5 foot run, and then everything else. So it's just easier when you write this down. You can go ahead and use your carpenter pencil to write this down, obviously, and this just stays anywhere you want it. I like to put it in the middle because it gets used a lot, especially in the beginning, but this stays in your belt at all times. And then we have our 2 bits here. So my tool belt has these little slots. I don't know if you guys can see that. These little slots inside of here that allow you to just slip your bits inside of there, all right? And the 2 bits you're gonna wanna keep inside of your belt are your gutter hex bit, your 6-inch gutter hex bit. This is used for your zip screws. And then you wanna keep a Phillips bit also in your bag. This is used for your regular screws for going into the walls. And if you ever have to, remove an old screw, sometimes the gutters, when they hang them, they add screws to the back of them, and then you gotta remove those. So it's important to keep these 2 on there. It eliminates you from having to go back to the truck and losing these all the time. If you just keep it in your belt where it should be, you don't have any problems, all right? So that pretty much covers everything inside of our belt for our needs and our necessities. So again, everything that I just covered needs to be in your bag at all times. No ifs, ands, or buts. The next thing I'm going to talk about is what could be in your belt and what should be in your belt for your different roles. So let's just go ahead and recap what we went over. So we have our utility pliers, we have our needle nose pliers, we have our hex bit and our Phillips bit, we have our torpedo level or our bullet level, our regular snips, some carpenter pencils. I prefer, again, you have 1 or 2. You have 2, not 1. If you have 2, it eliminates you from losing the other one. So try to have 2. We have our smaller snips right here. We have our notebook used for taking measurements, our utility knife, our tape measure, and then we have our impact drill. So again, and then we also need our zip screws, and we have our regular Phillips screw here. So those will be in the truck, or those will be in your bag at all times. And again, these are what you need in your belt no matter what. All right, so now that we covered everything that needs to be in your belt, we can go ahead and talk about what else could be in your belt or what should be in your belt for your different role. So our first thing we're gonna start off with is our operator. If you're an operator, I would suggest obviously having everything that we need that we just talked about, as well as keeping a pair of downspout crimps in one of your pouches, a pair of end cap crimps, also a caulk gun. You can hook your caulk gun onto here. I would also maybe suggest having a second tape measure or a longer tape measure for people that are removing the gutters. So installers, I would keep things such as maybe a hammer or a crowbar on here, a nail puller, things like that. Obviously, whenever you get done with them, you can go ahead and put them away, but it's very important that you have a spot for them in your tool belt because you don't want to be running around trying to find the tools. You want to be able to grab them, put them in your belt, use them, and then when you're completely done with them, go ahead and put them back in the truck. And so that's why it's important that you want to maybe at least have at least 2 pouches. So that way you can have 1 with all your necessities, or 2 with all your necessities, and then a 3rd one for your extra needs. All right, so that covers everything about our tool belts. Again, these are very important to wear. One of our most important tools you're going to use on the job. Saves us so much time you wouldn't even know, and that's why it's very important to wear. So that's everything with our tool belts.